everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. I am excited about next week because Kelvin is going to be joining us. Kelvin has, he watches my show regularly, every week. And he has a story of his own, and which is quite interesting. He was a former pastor, and of course, he's gone through this process of deconstructing and really rebuilding his identity. And he has a lot to share that I believe will be helpful to some of you, so that you can see that there is a community of like-minded people that are going through some changes, that are asking questions, that are seeking, searching, and wanting to know the truth of who they are. People that are discovering the truth of their identity, people that are becoming the architects of their own identity, and getting rid of the structure that was set up for them, years ago, and which has a lot of cracks in it and just creates a lot of structural damage. So I'm excited about that. Next Thursday, same time, 2 p.m. Central Time, right here on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can pick it up at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you are not able to, then of course it streams 24/7, so that you can pick it up at any time. But anyway, in the meantime, let me just share with you, I've been having just a really fantastic week. The year has just started with just some goodies and just exponential growth for me. And what I want to share with you today is to never underestimate the truth of your intuition, the truth of your thoughts, the truth of your peace, your nervous system. When your nervous system is at rest, at peace, when it's rightly regulated, there's just something that happens. Your thoughts are coherent, and you really get into a flow that is intentional. And with that, life responds to you. Life responds to a regulated nervous system. It responds to your intention. It responds to a decision. Because one thing that's important, my friend, is once you make a decision about your identity, about anything, we're talking about identity today. Once you make a decision, authorship begins. Once you make a decision, you have begun to author your life. You have started to author a new identity, or really going back to who you really are. We talk about this journey of self-discovery, and, we have been growing by seasons, chapters, layers, level, whatever works best for you. We have been really growing and growing and growing. For me, it's season. I go through different seasons, and I have I have what it takes, or the tendency to recognize them. The ability to pivot is really what I mean. I have the ability to pivot. I don't have to keep myself in one place and call it a decade, or, a year, or whatever. I have the ability to recognize when there are changes within me. And when that happens, what happens? I pivot. In other words, I could be in a season today, and tomorrow I sense something else in my nervous system, my intuition. Well, the nervous system brings you kind of a calm and a peace when it's regulated. It tells you like you are on the right path, you are on track. So don't despair, don't question things a lot. Just go with what you are sensing on the inside. And I have a tendency to move with intention, so that life can then respond to me. Because what happens is that as you move with intention, life start responding to that. Why? Because you are building, you are constructing, you are creating the identity of you. And when that happens, and again, this is not positivism or optimism or self-love. None of that. This has to do with you honoring the essence of who you are, honoring that identity, the structure that you yourself built. Remember, there's been a structure that's been designed for you years ago. When you were little, your identity was a structure of it was established by outside influences, your parents, your teachers, your pastor, your leaders, everything, politics. It was constructed on a framework, a platform based on culture, society, and all of that. So now comes the time, as we are going through this journey of self-discovery, that we are now faced with the issue of identity. Who are we? Who are you? And once you start discovering that, your life will change. Because what will happen is that life will stop happening to you. Life will start responding to you. And this, my friend, I know this is, for me, is lived experience. I've learned that once I make a decision about something, about anything, once I make a decision, that becomes authorship. That means I am now moving forward, becoming the author of my life, the author of things that surrounds me and things that happen. I take responsibility, and we know that things happen in life, but we move with a mindset of taking responsibility for who we are and the decisions that we make and the intention that we live with and all of that. So in order to build your identity, you have to think that you need to create a whole new framework. You need to create a whole new framework that can sustain, that can stand under pressure. Because what happens is that we have a tendency to water down our non-negotiables to accommodate people, and we change our standards in order to bring comfort to someone else or in order to fit in. And that doesn't happen. When you start to construct your identity, remember, you become the architect. You are now the architect. You're going to set up the beams, and you will determine how deep those beams are placed. The deeper they are, the stronger you become. Why? Because it will be able to withstand pressure. When pressure comes and when people try to get you to do things that you may not want, because the beams are so cemented and so deep, you will come to a place where you automatically, when you mean no, you mean no. So you don't say yes when you mean no. And that's what happens with when you become the architect. You're the ones that set up the beams. You're the one that set up the brackets. You're the ones that set up the trusses, I guess is what they call truss, the hooks and all of that. And you're the one that cemented. It's interesting. We went shopping the other day, or actually, excuse me. I think I had bought something. I had bought some jewelry, and then I got home and I realized I had the same thing. And so I wanted to take it back. So we went to the store, and now this store is, it's kind of a unique store. It's a big department store, but it's kind of high end. So they try to accommodate the customers. That means that wherever you are, and if you have a return, you can return it at any counter. They don't want to have you walking through the store trying to find customer service or the service desk or anything like that. So you can go to any counter, any, if you buy shoes, you could go to, clothing or cosmetic, whatever, and they have to take the return. So I had this piece of jewelry, and I went to, I think it was the department. Well, it was like watches, men's watch department, and so forth, because it was on the way. As soon as I walked in, it was there, and then the exit to the mall is someplace else. So I walked in, and I had the piece of jewelry, and I said, I'd like to return this. So I noticed that she kind of hesitated because, of course, she was in the middle of doing something, and then it would be a little disruptive. But anyway, she did it. And she did the transaction, gave me my receipt, and so forth. Now, she's over here, and jewelry is all the way over there. And so she said to me, once she finished the transaction and gave me my receipt, she said something like, oh, can you do me a favor? Can you walk this over there? Can you take this over there to jewelry? And if she asks you about it, just tell her that you did the return over here. And so automatically I said, no, I'll let you do that. And so my husband was aghast. He's like, I can't believe you told her that. And he said, oh, she just did not know who she was dealing with. And he was, aghast, because he thought, wow, you really told her. It did not even occur to me to think otherwise, because first of all, that's not my job. And just imagine, I just did a return, and obviously, I don't know what was her, thinking, but I could think, well, oh wow, if she trusts me. Obviously, I look trustworthy, but she's going to ask me to take this piece of jewelry. So what is she going to do? Stand over there to make sure that I went directly there, or what? And so when I get over to jewelry, what am I going to say? I just made a return. She did it, and she asked me to, that's too much stuff. So I said, no, I'll let you do that. And I just proceed walking. My husband, he's something else. And it's not, you see, but that happened automatically. I did not even think about that. I did not even consider that. I did not consider, oh, I could help her out, do her a favor and all that. No, that just simply was not my thing to do. You need to do that. And then if there are any questions and you can explain, you can take it over to her and say, look, this is a return. This is your department. Here's the jewelry. Here's the whatever, the receipt and so forth, and go through all that. So my point is, after a while, when you come to the place of knowing your identity, of being the author, being the architect, you are the one that will be constructing. You will be constructing your standards. You will be, and just think of them as beams, and how deep those beams will be. Your standards. You'll be constructing your boundaries. You'll be constructing your non-negotiables. You'll be constructing your your yeses, your nos. You'll be constructing your recognition of alignment. You will not allow yourself to be misaligned. Sometimes we do that. And why do we do that? We do that to accommodate people. We do that to make people feel okay. Or, I don't want to really upset the apple cart, and, I'm going to do this just because. You will make sure that what you do will be in alignment with who you are. With who you are. And that will start happening automatically. You will become that by default. And all of it has to do with how deep are your roots, how deep and how secure are your roots. When a week ago, I had spent some time with someone, and someone, very knowledgeable and intuitive and so forth. And we had a very stimulating conversation. And in that, we were talking about, just business and life and so forth. And I said to her something like, I said, I got the sniffles today, so bear with me a little bit. I said to her, I said, sometimes when, my life, I sometimes think that I don't have a story. And she's like, really? Like what, why is that? And I said, well, because, my life has really been good. My life has really been been good. I've had challenges just like everyone else, but nothing to. And then I made reference to Tyler Perry. I said, Tyler Perry, Tyler Perry, had a period in his life where he was living under the bridge and living out of his car and things of that nature. And then, I mentioned, I said, Oprah had a very gory type background, and she had experiences with sexual assault and all of that kind of stuff, being mistreated and from there to where she is, equally Tyler Perry from there sleeping under the bridge to where he is, and all of that. And then I mentioned Lisa Nichols. Lisa Nichols is one of those, she's a very successful and effective motivational speaker, but her background also, she had a baby, and she was just in a situation where, she went through lack and broke and all of that. And now, of course, she's a millionaire, very successful. She moved from California to the Bahamas, met someone, and she's happily married. And it's just a great before and after. And she said, my friend that I was chatting with, she said, so what do you mean about you don't have a story? I said, no, because, even though I had setbacks and situations in my life, like job loss, and, I lost my car and had to give up my apartment because I lost my job and all of that. But those are just life situations, just like everyone. I'm sure everyone has, or most people, perhaps have had the experience of losing a job or, not having a car or whatever it is. But, the fact that I didn't have a car doesn't mean that I didn't have a ride, because I had friends who would just give me their cars. They would say, like, drop me off at work and use my car to do whatever you need, go look for a job and so forth. So I didn't have that situation. And as far as, me having to give up my apartment, when I remember there was a time when I had to give up my apartment, and it was like, really, just imagine. And, by then I was an adult. And but I was never in the street. I was never living out of my car. I was never living under a bridge. I went to a big, beautiful house with friends to, that was like a transition period. So I don't see that as a gory before and after. And she said, no, it doesn't. Your story does not have to be that way. Your story, and she's kind of highlighted to me and pointed out, no, it's because of your mindset. It's because of the way you think. It's because you think, or your mindset says to you that you deserve a good life, you deserve the best things, and all of that. So your mind is set up to attract the good things of life. And I started to give that some thought, and when I came home, I thought, wow, that makes sense. And then I started doing inventory of my own life as to how it was. And the more I think of it, I realize that the things that I share now, it's just that I am giving language to these experiences now, but they're actually lived experiences. And when I hear people talk about their personal life, sometimes I can't relate, because that is not my lived experience. And I remember when I was growing up, and this have to do with relationships and so forth. When I was growing up, I adored my mom. My mother was, there was no other like my mom. And I loved my dad. Now, my dad loved us differently. My dad provided for us, gave us the best of everything. He wanted us to go to the best schools, have the best things. He wanted us to lack nothing. So he was a provider in that way. He wanted us to have everything that we wanted. And it was a good life. I lacked nothing growing up. He didn't provide any kind of nurturing, like like affection and all that, but in a touchy way. But he showed it He showed his love by the things he could provide for us and for uh, providing. Now he was a disciplinarian. My dad was, he was a disciplinarian. So that was another thing also that he did not spare the rod. My mom, on the other hand, she did take time with us, and I was able to have conversations with her even in my adult life. She was like my best friend. But now that I think back, I think of my own relationship with my husband, and when I think of my mom and my dad, what my dad showed me was, or what I deduce from it now, is that he showed me the type of man I did not want to have, the type of husband I did not want to have. Because even though my dad was a good provider, he wasn't the type of husband that I would want. Because, yeah, I experienced an element of abuse, maybe mental, emotional abuse, and so forth. And I also saw infidelity, and that was just a reality. And most of you understand, back in the day with our parents, most of them, even though my mom was a businesswoman, my dad had a business and my mom ran the business, and she was able to do that effectively, but still it's not where she could leave a situation and say, well, I'm out of here, I'm not going to put up with this. That just didn't happen back then. That just did not happen back then. Women, they put up with it, put up with stuff. So having seen that, what it taught me, things that I would not tolerate. It helped me set standards for myself when it comes to relationship. It helped me set boundaries and it helped me set standards. There's certain things that in my mind, in my life, I know that it just doesn't go. It's not even a matter of, oh, I won't put up with it. No. It simply does not, it just does not register in my identity. It just doesn't fit. And I, in my mind, said, that will not happen. That was a beam that I cemented into the foundation, into the framework of my identity, even though I had not really discovered or came into the identity what I know today of myself. But I knew that certain things I will not tolerate. And one of it was like infidelity. That just doesn't, I just cannot compute that in my mind. Or any kind of abuse, verbal, mental, psychological, much less physical. Those are things, and I'm sharing that because I hear, and on social media, people come and they air their grievances and, of their divorce and relationships and so forth. And I just I listened and I thought, wow, that's really, interesting. But those are things, those are for me like standards that are so cemented. I remember before I was married, when I was in a relationship years ago, and I, long relationship, 3 years maybe. And my husband doesn't even know this story, but it's worth sharing. And it was a great relationship back then. And this person was in the medical field. He was a doctor, a surgeon. And I say that because I'm gonna, qualify why I'm saying that. And then there was an experience of infidelity, and I found out. So because even back then, my identity, the structure that built that the beam that is my identity having to do with infidelity, it would not even sustain that violation. And I moved in silence, and I'm not one for drama or chaos. I'm not one to threat or to bluff. I am just not one to go through all of that. when you make a decision, you become the author of your life. You become responsible. So I just made sure that I was, of course, after I expressed my disappointment and all of that, a little bit of rage and so forth, because of the disrespect and the lack of honoring who I am and so forth. Uh, I went into planning mode. It took me perhaps a week or two. And once I got my things together, I just, because we lived together, and I just moved out. I just moved out. I moved out without any kind of notice or warning or threat or bluff, none of that. I made a decision and became the author of my life having to do with that situation. Infidelity, that's not, and again, it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. That is a beam, that is a standard within me that cannot be sustained. That standard, you cannot rock it. It's cemented. That I'd rather be alone. Than to tolerate that type of disrespect. And that's why I always say that, our relationship, like with my husband now, is based primarily on respect before love. Because within that respect, there's love. But a lot of people, they love someone and they wind up killing them. You hear that all the time. And I made a decision and I left. And I never went back. And the reason I said his profession is because at the time, my friend said, "You what?" He said, my friend would say, just because of, one infraction like that, you left? The guy's set up, the guy's he's a doctor, he's a surgeon, your life can be so beautiful, you have had such a good life and so forth. And people related his profession to a certain sense of security in my life, like financial security and socioeconomic security. Like, why would you leave that? If he is your partner, why would you leave a situation like that? People thought that was the ideal because of the profession, of what is associated with the profession, the affluence, the money, and all of that. But you see, it didn't matter to me. That did not matter to me because that standard having to do with relationships, that standard, that beam in my framework, the structure of my identity was so cemented that when that pressure came, that was a non-negotiable. I had already established that, not by dialogue. I don't even think you need to have that kind of conversation with someone. Like, if you do this is what's going to happen. That's not, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what are your thoughts? You establish a sense of self, a sense of confidence, a sense of who you are, and people, they see you, and that is transmitted energetically. They sense your vibe. They know that you honor respect. They know that you flow in a sense of honoring who you are. And back then, I'm telling you, back then I did not have language to attach to that. But remember what I said earlier, that I saw my growing up, I saw, my dad, I lived that. There was infidelity. That was the truth. And that was something that back then, my mom, and her story is this. There was, after that infidelity and all of that kind of stuff, after a while, she had it. But her goal was to raise her children, 3 girls, and get them out. My sister came to the US, she became a nurse, and, she wanted to get us out so that, because she wanted us to be raised in a home with mom and dad, and even though it was a little toxic in that regard, because we saw things, we saw like, well, where's that? He's not here at night, or whatever, and that's the reality of things. And so she wanted to get us out. She wanted to make sure that we were educated, that we were on the path to our lives, our destiny, our future, our dreams, goals, and so forth. So she sacrificed that. And after a while, my mom, oh, she was just, after a while, my mom pulled that on my dad. She made arrangements to exit, and she did that so beautifully. My dad, did not even know it until like a week later, something like that. That's my story. I guess that is my story. But that's what my mom did. And when she came away and she came to the U.S., she had such a wonderful life. Cruises and shows, and she just really started to live a fruitful life. And her latter days were certainly better than her former days. And I was happy about that. In fact, my dad, I remember when he realized that, that she was gone, he was devastated. He was, because my mom was a woman of dignity. She was a woman of honor. She was, she had, gravitas. My mom was just such a, highly respected woman in the community. So my dad liked that. He liked having that secure, because she's not one that would go out and say, well, you cheat, I cheat. That was just not her. She had enough dignity and self-respect that she would not allow herself to do that. But anyway, yeah. So she freed herself after a while, and that, to me, that was like a wow. He's like, wow, mom, great. And I remember my dad getting on the phone and begging her to come back, and begging her, and she said no, and that was it. That was the end of it. And she lived out her life, happy, taking a lot of cruises and going to a lot of events, fashion shows, events, and just a lot of social thing, because she was just very social. She was involved in, with the church, and they had a lot of events. So that's what she did. But as far as myself, I again remembered the experience I had with seeing that. And I always said, as I became a teenager, that's something that I would just not tolerate. I just rather be by myself and enjoy my life, and that's it. So with my experience of infidelity with that partner years ago, before I met my husband, that was a no-brainer. So I just left. And it's interesting because the experience was almost the same. Begging, please, I'm sorry but I'm not one to forgive. I don't believe in this forgiveness stuff. I move on. I don't, I'm not going to hold it against you, but I'm going to respect myself enough. I'm going to honor myself enough. And that's what happens when you become the architect of your identity. You know the things that you will tolerate. You know the things that you will not tolerate. Your non-negotiables become cemented, and you know that whatever it is, it's immovable. And as a result, life responded to me. Years later, I met my husband, who is an absolute, I adore my husband, an absolute gentleman, treats me with respect. And that's not like a wow, that's what I expect. And whatever your standards are, my friend, that is what you should expect from people. There should be things that should be non-negotiable. There should be boundaries that you set. And this way, you get to define things like relationships, friendships, age, careers, success. You get to define what those things mean to you. A lot of people today, I see it a lot on social media. A lot of people today are running around, well, not, saying they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel valued, they don't feel relevant. Why? Because they don't know who they are. And when that is, you are seeking validation from external sources. You're seeking validation from external sources because you have not established an identity. So you are, life is happening to you by chance. Life is happening and you are probably reacting instead of allowing life to respond to your vibration, to your energy, to your identity, and then you respond to what it brings to you. Because why? It will be a clearly defined framework. It knows what you expect. That experience that I had years ago with infidelity, I mean, it was not even something to be debated, considered, thought of, and evaluated, processed. No, there are just certain things that are non-negotiable. And regardless of what the situation is, it didn't matter. That was a violation. That was it, because this is what happens. When you violate your standards, it creates a crack in the framework of your identity. It creates a crack. When you have a house and you have to make sure that it's, what do they call it? Foundation. You don't have foundation problems, because if you have foundation problems in, your house, that's an issue. You have to get engineers in here, to fix things and to make sure the foundation is solid, to make sure that the framework, the foundation is solid. And that's what happens when you start negotiating your identity. You create cracks. It waters it down. It lightens it. It doesn't give it strength, a strong foundation. It doesn't secure the foundation. The beams are not deep enough. That's why, when I have conversations with people and they say things like, I'm still on the fence, that kind of stuff. Somebody saying, she's still on the fence. That for me is a no. They have no idea what they want. Still on the fence. Or wishy-washy, I guess, is another word for it. She's wishy-washy. That's a no. That's a no. There is no substance. There's no foundation. There's no strength. There is no security in whatever it is. People that say things like, comme ci, comme ça, they don't know. A lot of it has to do with the language that you speak about yourself. The language that you speak about yourself, the things that you think about yourself. When I talk about identity, think about this. What is the concept that you have of yourself? What is the concept? Have you considered that? What is the concept that you have of yourself? What is the movie? What is the story that constantly plays in your mind? What is the story of yourself that you are telling to yourself, that you are repeating to yourself? What is the story, my friend? You're building your identity. You are constructing. Remember, you are the architect of your identity. You are the architect. And once you make a decision, you become the author. When you decide, authorship begins. And what is authorship? That is you being the originator, you being the creator, you taking responsibility. It becomes you. You become the author. Imagine that. The identity that most of us went through in life, uh, that's something that was imposed upon us, again, by external forces, teachers, your parents, your family, your pastor, and the community, and all of that. And so you become what people expect you to be. You start behaving and acting, and you become what is expected. You conform to the social standards. You conform to the social standards, and uh, you, in most cases, begin to act as the collective. Everybody, this is the way we do it. Well, this is the way we do it. And this is the way we do it. And that's how we do it. And so we go through life with that mindset. But when you start moving with intention, which is where we are at now on this journey, on this chapter, in this season, when you start moving with intention and start saying, you know what, I am now going to construct my identity. It's coming from me. I'm the one that's going to set the standards, establish the boundaries. I'm going to be the one that engineers everything. I'm going to set the beams. I'm going to set the trusses. I'm going to set the brackets, all of that. I am the one that's going to establish the non-negotiables. I am the one that is going to, I'm the one that's going to set the framework, and I will determine how deep the beams go, how deep, how strong, how secure do I want to be once I come into that place of constructing, being the architect of your identity. And regardless of what you hear on the outside, it won't bend you. Why? Because you know who you are. You know who you are. You know what you put up with. You know what you like, what you don't like. That experience that I had, and that's real lived experience. The experience of the relationship that I had, a long time before my husband, and after that, I was single for a few years, and enjoyed that. I did not, for me. And what I like about where my life is headed now is that I am now able to put a language to all of that. At that time, it was only, I'm not going to put up with this. I just, that just doesn't set well with me. That was my language. It wasn't like, wait a minute, that really, if I tolerate that, it'll happen again. And what will happen is that it'll put a crack in my worth. And then if I start negotiating things like, oh, well, this person, has a good career, he's a physician, and my life can be this way and that way. That was secondary to the honor that I gave myself. And there are things in your life too, my friend. There are things where you can make decisions. There are things that you're doing now that you don't even want to do. And some of it has to do with sometimes family issues. And, you're doing things because you feel obligated. And in the meantime, what you can do is start thinking in terms of, in fact, somebody mentioned the other day something about a situation with their family, and they're the ones that are doing this, that, the other all the time, and so forth. And in my mind, I'm saying, okay, you need to determine what's right for you, and at the same time, lead that person to a little more independence, because sometimes we take on the responsibility of someone else and we don't allow them the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to grow and to be, to become. They may not be where you're at on the same timeline in terms of understanding identity. But if you are concerned about your progress, you're living with intention and living a life that responds to you, and you need to be in that vein and that framework and so forth. If you're concerned about that, then it is incumbent upon you to do that for you. You must do that for you. And at the same time, use your ingenuity, use your creativity, use your originality to set up a framework for that person, so that you don't have to either tolerate or do something out of obligation or because you think you're the only one and so forth. No, there are choices. There are things that you can do. And sometimes when you allow people the opportunity to be themselves and to let go and to know that, wait a minute, you're actually helping them. Some people are just dependent and codependent and so forth. But then there's nothing you can do about that. As long as you're doing what you're doing for that person, you have to allow them the responsibility to be themselves. If they're in the right faculty. Now, if they're not in the right faculty, that's a whole different situation. And then again, you can be creative and to do whatever you need to do to alleviate the pressure, the stress, and the things that set you back. We are such creative beings, but we don't think about it. We don't think about the possibilities, the opportunities, and all that. But if somebody is in their right mind, then it is important that you allow them the opportunity to grow, and not to have you, running up and down and just really disrupting and creating chaos and drama and all of that. You just cannot allow for that. It's not fair to you. Your nervous system will be in chaos constantly, and it's not good for them. You have to make it clear, and it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. It is simply, again, you walking and living with intention. And my friend, I'm telling you, once you start doing that, once you start navigating through life in that vein, life starts responding to you. It responds to you. Why? Because of your expectations. You believe you deserve the best. You expect the best. You should have a good life. Things should flow for you. Those are the things that you will start to attract. Why? Because the framework is clear. There is clarity in your life. There is clarity. The stories that you can play in your life, the stories and the movie that you can play in your life can create. My friend, I am talking from lived experience, not like somebody told me this, and don't get it twisted. Things do happen. Things do happen because things happen. But for the most part, you can create a life that responds to you. And so you will live responding to life and not reacting as life happens, because that's what happens. Life happens and then we react to it. We can't think, we get emotional. And that's why I say this has nothing to do with love, because love is emotional and it can fluctuate. But when you talk about honoring your identity, when you talk about honoring yourself, when you talk about respecting yourself, again, yeah, you can love yourself, but honor and respect and knowing who you are. It's like setting a strong foundation in the understanding of your worth. My friend, you are worth it. You are worth it. You are worth the time. You are worth the energy. You are worth the effort. You are worth the knowledge. You are worth the understanding. You are worth the peace, the joy. You are worth the favor that life brings to you. You're worth it. But do you know it? You are worth every bit of it. What are you doing to establish, to become the architect? Are you in a lab, an architectural lab? You need to get into a lab and uh, get measurable results. Experiment, test, and figure things out. Let it all happen in a lab. It's you with you. When this person, my friend that I was with, um, when 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 I came home, I start thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, I have a story. I have a story. My story is just different. It's not, oh, woe is me, but it's my story. And that's what I bring to you today. Now, your story may be different, but it's your story. And whatever it is uh, that's happened to you in the past or your life, what have you learned from it? How has it built you up? Or are you still relying on external influences, people telling you who you are? Again, if it doesn't come from you, if you are not the architect of your identity, if you are not the architect, there are cracks in the framework. Why? Because it doesn't come from you. There are cracks in the framework. It's unstable. The foundation is unstable, and when something hits you, when pressure comes, you don't know how to think critically. Your emotional intelligence goes out the window because you're frazzled and you can't think. Why? Because the framework, it's not stable, it's not strong, it is not deep enough. It's hard for you to tell yourself you are going to be okay. I remember when I walked away from that relationship, I did not even think in terms of, am I going to be okay? No, I just knew that for my own sake, to protect the integrity of my identity, I had to do it. And it was not even a matter of, oh, I forgive you. It wasn't even a matter of that. Because after that, we did talk, we not immediately after, but perhaps a year or two after, we did because I'm not going to hold it against you. Why do I not have to hold it against that person that violated that trust? I didn't have to hold it against them because I made the decision that works for me. So I didn't have to hold it against them like, okay, I release you, or what's the other thing that people say? Oh, bring closure. No. My closure was my decision. When I decided to leave, I physically left, took all my stuff and left, or all the things that I thought I would need and left. I became the author. I made a decision and I became the author of my life. Excuse me. It's just now, again, that I am putting language to this, and it's making a lot of sense. And when I go back, and it's like my friend said, well, you have a story. I start thinking about, about my life, and 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 the things that I learned with my mom and dad. My dad, again, showing me what not to tolerate, what not to put up with, and so forth. And that became a part of me. And now I discover that I am indeed the architect of my identity. And, this is something that is progressive. This is something that is developing on a larger scale. The other day, I was presented with an opportunity, and it just seems beyond me, just seems like so bigger than I have ever thought of or done, and so forth. And for a fraction of a second, it kind of scared me, just the thought of thinking it. And then I made a decision. Cynthia, you can do it. Not only Cynthia, you can do it, but Cynthia, you will do it. And when I made that decision, obviously, I have now become the author of that whole situation. And I will unfold it as I see necessary and fit, and so forth. I will allow it to unfold. I will do the work, because right now I am doing the research. My friend, it is your life. It is your life. It is your decision. It is your life. It is your decision. And you are the architect of your identity. You have got to build an identity that works for you, so that life can respond to it, and then you respond to life. You need a break, my friend. You need a break. You need the freedom to enjoy this life right here, right now. And you have everything that you need to make a decision right now and take authorship of your identity. I'm going to leave you with that, my friend, so that you can sup on that. I'm going to leave you with that so that you can give it some thought and start putting it into action. In the meantime, let me remind you that next week, Kelvin is going to be with us. Kelvin Wilson is his name. And he's going to share a lot, a little bit about his background. I mentioned before, he was, I don't know what, anyway, we're going to just kind of flow, as a matter of fact, because I don't like a lot of scripted dialogue. We're going to just, because I like it organic and authentic. So we're going to flow in that vein. I am here every Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I invite you to join me. And if you can't join me, you see the icons down here. It says YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. You can pick up the show 24/7 on those platforms. In the meantime, tomorrow is Friday, and then we have the weekend. So I'm going to hope that you have a phenomenal weekend. Just have a great weekend. Whatever you plan to do, just make sure you enjoy whatever you're doing. And even if you plan to rest, make sure that you do it with gusto. I say that because, some people share that it's hard for them to even think of sitting down or resting because they feel guilty. I had that conversation with someone the other day. People say, they feel guilty for feeling, experiencing joy and happiness and all of that. So anyway, I will see you same time next week, same place at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here. Now, have a great week. I'll see you then.